Hi everyone. Well, it looks like I am alone for right now, teaching, just going to do videos to put out there uh, to email everyone. So the difference of this shaped ornament is going to be that, hold on, adjust this over a little because the camera's going to be right in my face in a minute. So one of the things that we find with a thin neck shaped ornament is where do we start and stop our cording, and how do we put it on when we do this? And so I am going to get started. Let me see, I might need another light on here. Okay. So let's get started by making our cording. Now I recently put out a cording video, but I did want to show you, just have it on here available for anyone that might need it. So, and didn't want to deal with that. So we are going to bring that over a little because it's dark green. So see where the knot is. And we just cut it just like that. Okay. We're going to do 10 and 10. It's obviously a same color, monocolor cording. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I don't really feel like I'm going to have a lot of sins to cover as far as waste canvas because it's not an extreme shape. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But I like that thickness of cording. It's my personal preference. As far as the shape of this and the size of it. So I'm going to hang that over the edge so that I can use two hands. All right. Hey, Lauren. Yay, somebody came.
I'm doing double duty, working and watching.
Well, I am recording it, but you go ahead, and I understand if you gotta work, because that's, I'm with you there. So, so we're just gonna make some cording. And first we start by tying them all together. And it's 10 and 10. We're going to do it by hand because I don't like doing the shorter cord with the drill. I find it cumbersome. You are more than welcome to do it. And Lauren, if you think of anything that you need me to explain or something, just turn your mic on and shout it out anytime. Don't worry about it. So we fluff the bits out, okay, so that we can get the glue deep in. And then I kind of just spread a little bit around all of the outside. And then for those of you who do not have asbestos fingers, I advise you get some of the flat paddles, or even in a pinch you can use just a pair of pliers and it'll come right off. I'm going to finish smoothing that down with my fingers because this is going in my vise that is for, uh, yeah, that fly tying. And if it's not skinny enough, I can't fit it in there. Worst case scenario, I grab the other vise. But I like to keep as low a profile on that as possible. Then we go ahead and take off a little bit of the extra. Not a ton, because I want to have enough in there in the vise. Okay. Show you putting it in the vise. Okay. Seeing it's not going to do it. There. It's a weird little vise, but it's what I'm used to after all these years. Okay. I don't think I tightened that down enough. Okay. Ooh, no. Oh, my counted. Okay. I say, great. All that counting for naught. I'm going to have to count them again. Okay. So we put out 3 pieces of tape. I'm going to put you that way so you can watch. 1, 2, 3. And we smooth it all down. And then we're going to take and put the tape, put it at the top. So as we start to roll clockwise, okay, it's all ready to roll. And this is where my sweater that I love, because it has the little hand thingies and my hands are constantly cold, is nice, but yeah, it doesn't kind of work for that. And we just keep turning to the right, turning to the right. You do get spoiled with the drill, because it does seem to go so much faster, but the problem is it almost goes too fast and overturns it, and then it fights you so much to get it tacked in. So we're going to take and always put your hand here on your vise, even if it's a standard vise, or if it is like if you're using the little vise that's like that. It's not really a vise, it's a clamp. But see, I just felt it turned over on itself because I didn't hold it tight enough to the right as I was reaching for something. But you can work that back out. Before you pull it to the right, always give it a little support, because, yeah, can't tell you how many times it popped out of the vise thinking it's in there nice and tight. So then I put it into the side of my table. You can use the clamp it down if you want to. You figure out a way that works for you. And then we do it again. Now, why am I doing green on this versus green and gold? And I kind of like to just emulate the bottle. This person put 2 rows around it. I don't know if they thought they needed to because it was so thin and they were told to. I'll roll a little bit of it over, but not a lot. So the green will kind of help give it the bottle-ish look. And I tend to not do super fancy on something that it needs to be about the needle point. I've done green and gold on it before. I don't know, sometimes it just doesn't, I don't know. To me, the bicolor things like that um, can look out of place when it's wanted to look like a specific brand of something. But that's just me. Use what you want. So now we're going to turn everybody to the left counterclockwise and we're going to overturn it. Okay? And I don't know if you can. I am constantly battling being able to see which one I'm being seen in. All right, keep going. Keep going. Keep overturning it. You might say, well, why are we overturning it? Something about the overturning it and then grab and pulling it, it aligns them. And I shouldn't have done that, but it happens. My hands are tired. It aligns everything in such a way that it just doesn't loosen as easily if you do that. Um, so, I already did a shaped class, and so what makes this different than the last one? Well, the last one had so many right angles in it. I mean, it's essentially the same class, but the way we're going to put the cording on this is different because we're going to begin and end at the bottom. And that's because this is so small that when you try to, even if you use a really thin cord, when you try to put your beginning and ending in the top of something so thin, so I mean that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 8 stitches, which is half an inch. So when you're trying to put this in, or even if you're one of the people like I used to do, where you put it in there and then you feed it all the way around, okay, and then bring your loop across and in, that's 2 pretty big ends to get in here, and it leaves a big gap that you have to hide. So this is why we're going to begin and end at the bottom, and we will stitch the base of the loop. We'll start here, go up here, we'll make our loop, we'll put a stitch in there, and then we'll go back down. But I am going to tell you also, if you don't want to sew with a curved needle, I will explain to you how to use glue. This is an easy one to glue your cording on if you want to. Is the longevity there? And if you, I've never had this glue fail me in when I use it on Limoges boxes and things like that. So if you're just somebody that's not, I am gonna do the other. I am going to explain to you how to use the Fabri-Tac glue. Now we're gonna do like we do with everything, pretty much 1/2 inch all the way around, even a little close on the top because we don't want so much waste canvas there, but that it builds up in that one spot. So we're just, when we dart that area is when it will, why does that look, oh, it's probably just the way my screen is over there. A lot of that bulk will be gone because of the darting at the top. And, okay. And I'm also, this is, this video, I'm showing you guys how to do it one way, but the person that stitched this, she can't use the curved needle. Her hands just can't do it anymore. And so that's why I'm teaching you the glue. That's kind of one of the trade-offs I made in allowance for using her piece. Oh, that reminds me. And here I thought I wasn't gonna use my iron. Silly me. I am totally using this iron because I gotta steam these over. Lauren, what is, if you can answer me, because I know you're working, what is your preferred way of finishing? Are you sewing your cording on or?
I've never finished anything. I'm
Oh,
hoping to get some really good tips.
okay. Well,
I
then
was,
you'll like to see both ways. Okay.
yeah, sure. I was going to ask you, are you getting right up to that?
So when I dart, I am coming one stitch away.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm doing about, these are about a quarter of an inch. When you have a curve, more darts is better
Hmm.
because it's going to allow that curving of the edge.
Okay.
Okay. Same around the top. That's why I said that these are going to, most of the bulk will kind of drop away because when you dart up here, we're going to need a lot more darts to make sure that it curves. So don't worry about, oh my gosh, this is going to shred away and it's going to ruin it and my stitches are going to come undone. It's not true. Don't be afraid of it. Everybody is afraid of that, and it will not happen because you have a woven canvas that has now been stitched over the top of as well. And so I've never had, maybe on the corners of a brick cover that I really had to kind of torque on at that base where the stitch would kind of go, but you just push it under and you never see it. So you really don't have to be afraid of that. But I mean, if you can see it, I'm going right up and I'm just leaving that one stitch right around that edge. And you really don't even need all of, like all of these little tiny bits out here. You just need the long pieces. So if they start, like I said, 13 mesh, you're gonna find that it shreds a lot easier. You're going to see a lot of schniblets going everywhere, and it's just going to be panic mode potentially. Don't panic. That's 13 mesh. It's a wider weave, and you'll be fine. I have had to save some people's ornaments, and it had like that much waste canvas left. Didn't matter because I just rolled a little bit of this edge under, glued it under, and it was all good. So don't ever feel like I ruined it. And even if you accidentally ticked in a little bit into one stitch, you'll still be okay. But for ease, definitely leave your 1/2 inch. It gives you enough to handle. You know, you're new at it and it looks really, so I use the short nip scissors because when you're going and trying to do this, it's a lot more movement with the long blades. Whereas with this, you just have more control. You can find them, you don't have to go to Joann's and get, $30. You can find them for 17, 18 bucks on eBay. And they are definitely worth it for being able to, especially on the fabric when you do it, because it just chomps right through. And sometimes those long scissors can kind of do the weird bendy thing and it doesn't cut it. Okay, so our next step is we turn all of these over. Okay, we're just going to bend them over. And as we do that, we got a good amount. See, I really don't think that she wants the bluish gray predominantly there. I think she was following the rule that somebody has put out there of you have to add 2 rows to everything. So we're going to take that with a grain of salt and just, it's going to be like a 0 profile of those stitches. You see it from the edge, so you're not really totally losing a stitch. But I am rolling this a little more than I usually do. And now I'm going to bring my iron over, and it's got a setting that's the steam setting. So the steam is turned on, and right on the edge, oh, I'm going to steam my camera. I just set it right on the edge. I'm not putting it up on top and like wham, whamming down on that and smashing the stitches, okay? I'm just barely setting it on to steam that, and then I make sure to roll it, because when I see it from the side, I don't want to see waste canvas. I can see a little bit there, but I'm going to pull that over later. Now, why are we steaming these down so that they're this tight? Because this is how we're going to get our shape. So you might say, well, why don't I trace it? Well, tracing it doesn't give you an accurate size of the size when it's rolled over. Yeah, you could trace it after you've steamed it over, but we're sort of going to do that just and not have to deal with tracing paper. So again, we're just putting it on. It's barely, I'm not letting it really press down on this. And make sure nobody's trying to, oh, okay, that they can't get into class or something. I used to turn my audio off on my phone, and then I found out my audio wasn't playing during something, and yeah, nobody could get a hold of me because I had it on mute, and I sat there and did my reveal with 10 minutes worth of no audio. So my apologies if my phone dings. So what I'm doing with the corners is I'm going to fold that corner under and lay that corner, those darts over the top. So the corner one goes in, and that's how you kind of get the best. I mean, these aren't supposed to be a hard square corner, like say what you want on a, yeah, coaster. Finally came to me. Thank you, brain, for kicking in. All right, go back on and just gently steam it again. Now, the crazy part of this is once we get the tracing done, once we outline it on our board, we're going to pull this all back open so that we can insert the foam core. So it's like, really? But it's interesting because it doesn't, you don't fight it to get it to roll over and fit in there as much if you do this. It just makes things a lot easier. So as we come to the top, this is kind of like fighting me because of that big piece that was there. So I just pulled it off. See that little bit? There's only probably like 2 stitches of canvas down in there, and it's buried under that anyway. I mean, look at how thin that is. 2, 4, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, that's about 8 stitches plus the 2 she put on. But we could still do it even if she didn't do the 2 stitches. It would still be okay. The safety stitches, you might say. Okay. So I can feel that this guy here is pushing against the other side. Let's trim those down because they'll poke right out the other side when we're trying to glue them around. Now, get the cording off my lap. And I am going to take my big piece of foam core. And I'm just going to take a chunk out of it. And I'm going to do the same. You're definitely going to want to set that down on your cutting board for sure. It's just how I am with chopping off a big piece. Okay, pull our little cutting map up here. Mat. So here we have our piece of 1/8 inch foam core. There's a supply list on my website for this. 1/8 inch foam core. This one happens to be the archival. So I don't use archival because, oh, it's so much better for ornaments, whatever. I use it because it's easier to cut. Something about, unless it's the Hobby Lobby version, which I like that because it's a little thinner, the regular 1/8 inch. It cuts very well also, but standard like the Elmer stuff, there's something that they put in it that as you're pulling the knife, it can start to what I call popcorn. It balls up as you're dragging your blade through it, and it's really, really annoying. And it really is what gives foam core a bad rap. So this doesn't do that typically. If it starts doing that, you need to change the blade on your knife. Okay? Always, always, always face down on the needle point. Why is that? Because when you cut into this foam core, you might not get a perfectly perpendicular cut. So then when you flip it over, if you tried to use, when you go to put it in, the back side, the back cut, so if we do it like this, and then we trace it out, and then we cut it, and then we go to flip it over and put it in, the side that we want, it just won't match. It's not, we want the edge that's going to be the perfect cut where the pencil line is to be facing the waste canvas. Okay, it might make sense to you in a few minutes. I also want to kind of make sure, because I can tell that this isn't going to necessarily be perfectly straight. These necks, once you start cutting them and turning them over, they kind of become unblocked. So we're going to look and make sure that our neck and our base, and I need my ruler there. So I'm going to put my ruler across the bottom. That actually is pretty straight. Okay. Okay, we're good. So this one juts in a little bit more because it follows the curve of the cap. Now, because this is a little bit thicker board, the 1/8 inch, we need to make sure to allow for when it wraps around that little bit of depth. We have to bring it in a little bit smaller. So we have to bring it in about 1/8 of an inch, which is how thick our board is. Now you're going to say, okay, well, what if I used mat board? Well, mat board, you'd probably have to shave off about the thickness of the mat board so that it'll fit on the inside because it still has to wrap around it. I don't like mat board on something like, especially something like this, because it can get bendy. You know, that's a very thin, it's going to be a very thin piece. And with foam core, plus I just hate cutting mat board. It's so hard to cut. I cut it with scissors. I hate it that much. Because with an X-Acto knife, you have to cut it again and again, and it just makes me nuts. So I'd rather just use the foam core. And I kind of feel like it gives it a more polished look. There is a trick you can use. All right, if you want to make sure that you get it the same every time, take a piece of paper and mark off 1/8, put it down, make a mark, put it down, make a mark, and then connect all the dots all the way around so that it is, if you're that much of a perfectionist, you should be okay as long as you do a nice little general. Now I want to try to make sure, because this is going to be symmetrical, that this side and that side look pretty close to the same. It does have a little outcropping. It's one stitch. I'm just not going to be able to accommodate one stitch. So we're not going to worry about that aspect. Now we're going to cut it. I hold my knife like I do a pencil. And when I cut, I come in from the side, and I'm actually kind of angling it in a little bit, and I am hitting into the mat for control so that my blade doesn't have a mind of its own. And I just pull, and I make the blade do the work. Just gentle, gentle. Just drag it through. Don't sit there and fight it. It will go through. Just let the blade do its job. Take a little knot off that side. I feel like this is a real stumper for a lot of people. And I like the depth that this gives of this softish edge by the time we're done. It just looks more refined and a little more polished than the really thin mat board. And if you got to take a little bit off at a time, that's what you do. You do not have to make yourself nuts trying to follow the line and, you know, all in one stroke. You don't have to do that. Just when they're pretty straight, it's pretty easy. But see, I'm gonna take that little bit off there. Okay. Okay. Now here's where everybody's like, no, I don't want a bevel. It's really not that big of a deal. So I want you to think of it this way. You're going to hold it in your fingers here. Put it between your pinky and your ring finger. By holding it like this, you automatically put it at the right angle. And I want you to just very gently, okay, just very gently kind of saw in to get it started. and just let the knife gently, don't try to go too deep. Don't try to, if you need to, sometimes I'm balancing it in the mat, running that tip. You might not be able to tell, but you can tell by my mat. I run that, I nick it all the time. And just take that little bit off. Now, why are we doing this? Well, it gives us a nice edge, that rounded slopey effect. But also, by having this really sharp edge towards the back, we can pinch our edges together and collapse that gutter that can be too thick. Okay, again, holding it here. We never cut towards our, we don't do this, okay? Just like that, okay? Less is better. If you have to go back over it, who cares? It's better. So now you're going to come in, and whenever I start to feel resistance where it doesn't want to go, I back it up a little bit and kind of saw in. Always put it in the way that is a natural pull. Cutting, you know, like this, no. Draw it towards you, draw it towards you. Kind of just saw this little bit off. Now, I don't know if you can tell, but this has stages where there's a little edge right there. I'm going to just take the end of it, my finger, and smooth it is fine too. You don't have to use this end. Just soften that entire thing. I just burnish it down a little bit, take away any harsh edges. You're not going to see it underneath your needle point because, number one, this is basket weave. It's very thick stitching. Not very thick, but basket weave is a heavy weave on the back of this. So now we're going to pull all this open. Okay. I know, we just undoing everything we just did. But we have to put it in here and really know that we can get all of this back around, okay? So that when we set this piece in, I want to be able to see, that's good enough. I want to be able to see that gray stitching, basically, okay? I want to see a little gap of gray, yeah. That's my sister. Hold on. So she doesn't call me back. Okay. All right. And the top looks good. So we're going to do the top first because if I feel that when I do this that I don't have enough down here and I need to take away, let me see. Now I think I can, I actually think I'm going to do that now. Sometimes with points like that, bottles, when you turn it all over, the pulling that extra waste canvas around the top can pull it away and you'll have a bit of waste canvas at the bottom that shows. You can't pull it all the way around. All right, so I'm just going to burnish that down, not going to bother trying to re-bevel it, okay? All right. schniblets are getting on the inside. And I'd rather have a little, I'd rather play it safe than sorry when it comes to making sure that all of my waste canvas is getting around. Okay? And now that I know that, I want to kind of I'm going to come in and shred some of this out. Now, I just felt as I was kind of fussing with this, I just felt my neck on this bottle start to bend a little bit. You don't have to worry about if this side bends because the back piece will support it. So if you get a little kink, don't worry about it. The back side will play against, even if both of them did it, you won't have the double, okay? You'll be okay. Okay, so now you can kind of see why there's going to be no moving anything. Being able to put cording in this end. Okay, there. I always try to wait a second before I put my thumb down on there and, you know, scald the hell out of my, oh, the heck out of my, sorry. But it feels like hell when it's burning you. Just give it a second to cool before you put your finger on it, or lick it so your skin doesn't burn like, you know, grandma with the cast iron skillet. Okay. Now we're going to do the corner. Okay. We're going to get that curved right around. And I want to make sure we're pulling all of that waste canvas over. Okay. Now that we have that established, let's get the bottom on so it's nice and stable. One of the issues that can happen up here, like on the neck, is that you'll pull one side around and then this side will be too short and you won't be able to pull it around. So we have to be very careful. So let's get this part down and start putting some key areas. Smear it kind of thin so that it cools fast enough where you can just immediately pull it right over. Lay it down if it's easier for you to get the good pull, because you really want it to, okay? All right. So now I think what we're going to do is we're going to get a few darts up here set so that we don't have that issue up here where we get one side we get it lopsided. Okay. And pull it and we pull it. Okay. Now this side naturally seems to want to come around. I gotta cut some of that extra off because we're butting up against the other side and I don't really like that. It's gonna make it difficult to pull it around. Our cording is wide enough, thick enough that we really don't have to be afraid that we won't be able to hide any little white bits that might show through from doing this. but I really want you, so now that I have that side set, I have something to pull against on the other side. Don't pull so hard that it bends, but firm enough to really try to pull it around somewhat. Okay, oh yeah. See, you can pretty much see stitching coming all the way around, so you don't have to worry about that, okay? Any of that waste canvas. Okay. All right. Now, don't be overwhelmed. I know you can do it.
Hey, Kelly,
Yeah,
is the glue that is in your hot glue gun a fabric glue or just a high temp glue?
high temp, hot glue. They don't make one that is a hot glue gun that is specifically for fabric.
Okay.
So the fabric glue that I was speaking of earlier, it's called Fabric, F-A-R, F-A-B-R-I-C, then dash tack. This is the same thing, but this is all they sell at Hobby Lobby. They don't carry the brand of Fabric, even though this is the exact same glue. It's Fabric. I don't know why it is, but they both say Beacon on it. It says 3-in-1, and yeah. So this is what we will be using when we do the cording, intermittently with some stitching. So that's the fabric one. All right. Now we're kind of going to do the opposite of what we did earlier, where we put the corners under. I know it seems odd, but we're going to put this side down now. Okay. Just pull that right over. Reheat that area. Now, if you ever go, oh man, that's not even close. I need to take that off. That's the waste canvas is that's not good. It's so easy. You don't have to panic. You can just take your, if you have to do the whole thing, just take your iron, put it on steam, hold it above it, let it steam a little, and bring your pin, your dowel needle in, and just pop the tabs off. If it cools off, just give it another little steam and pop the rest of them off. You can also reignite the glue just by running the tip on there if you need to just push it in a little bit further. So you can heat it up again and manipulate it more if you feel like you didn't get it over far enough. Lots of ways to reach the mountaintop. And one of the reasons why I only use the high temp glue is because I don't trust. Okay, here's the perfect example. Recently I did the applique bag, and Robin had gotten a hold of me and said, you know, how would you do it? And so I told her, and I said, if you're going to use glue, you really should use the Fabric glue. I said, but please try to tack on a couple of spots. Well, she decided that the bag was too thick, which it is very thick. They're crazy thick. canvas. But she decided just to use hot glue. And it wasn't high temp hot glue. It was just, you know, the either settings, multi-temp. There we go. So she got to the cape and she opened her trunk and lifted up the bag and the piece fell off of the bag. So that's why we had a class, is because she was here and I said, do you want me to fix that for you? And then I ended up doing it as a class. If somebody doesn't, if this is a gift and somebody doesn't store it properly, then what happens? If they put it in their attic and it gets really hot, the Fabri-Tac that we're going to use on the edge of this will be its saving grace, because that really doesn't get affected by the heat. You can soften it and you can pull cording off by doing that if you make a mistake and it's already dry. But for the most part, I've never had that be a problem. So next step, woohoo, we're cooking with gas now, is we go around the outside. There's another reason why I know about the hot glue trick, because I had a friend who used to make scallop shells, wreaths, and she used to sell them at craft shows. So now we're going to take our mechanical pencil and angle it in a little bit, because if we put it straight down, the thickness of this tip isn't going to be, we don't want it to be straight out here. We want it to be in, and I'll show you that line in a second. So I kind of angle it in so it runs right under that edge. Okay. So even though it doesn't look like a big difference, okay, it will be. And I don't want there to be a ledge beyond. Ugh, I was painting today. You'd think acrylic paint would wash off, but apparently navy doesn't want to today. I just keep seeing it in the camera. It's annoying me. So, so we're going to cut this now. And we're going to do the same exact thing, but we don't make it smaller because we don't have to fit it in something. This is just for the backing material. So I'm going to start at this end, and you don't have to follow all the little wobbles that your line drew as you took it around the edge of that. I want you to just go as straight as possible. If you need to take it off the side because, you know, it's too much and you just want to and kind of chop at it, that's okay, as long as it has a relatively smooth edge. Like that. Sometimes it's easier to do small bits. Okay. And this is where it gets a little weird with the bottom. I'm going to take that little bump off. Okay. Because that bump came from the way this corner is, and we want it to be straight on the back. It doesn't need to have that weird little bump. Okay. So I think we kind of put a couple stars. I guess I wasn't thinking about this when I cut this. I think I want to make sure that there's a couple of stars. Oh, whoops. Oh, I didn't bevel it. My gosh, what was I thinking? Okay. Just taking that edge off. I missed like 3 steps getting all excited about that fabric. Okay. Give it a quick burnish. Just knock those edges down. Now, if you feel more comfortable using mat board, if you think you're going to have more control, I'm good with that. Just don't ever mix the two, because mat board and foam core lets out some kind of gas, and because it's made up of 2 different things, and the mat board can't support how this is going to bend, and it'll develop this. It usually happens more with hanging signs, but always use whatever you use on the front, use on the back. Okay? Don't take any chances with that bendy thing happening. And at this point, once you put the fabric on, sometimes there's a gap between with the fabric darts being built up around it and the waste canvas, and there can be a void with the mat board. Put a little shim of mat board in between so that when you glue it all together, that void is supported. Otherwise, when you press them together, they can get this little weird bowed belly dent in it. It goes for round ones especially. I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay. Next is felt. It's 65-35 wool polyester. We're going to put a little schmear on. Why are we doing that? And we're going to flip it over and we're going to rub it down so that you can't feel any of the little glue schmear on there. I just want this to hold this felt in place and stabilize, so when I do the next part, I'm not fighting to keep it and have it shift and be too short on one side. So with your fingers pressing, or the blade of your scissors, press that up, so as you cut, it's gonna have fold down over that extra bit. If you try to just trace around this and then cut, what ends up happening is that you don't make up that 1/8 of an inch, and it can end up making your felt be up here because it wasn't big enough to go around. So just always push it up, and it's not all that hard because that blade is bringing it right up to the edge so that it's got just that little bit extra. And when it goes down, you're going to see that it's like you can see the overhang, that's a little tiny bit bigger than the actual foam core. Because you don't want a hard line of this felt. And why are we doing the felt? Because we don't want to feel the bevel on the back side. The needle point stitching hides it, but if you don't put it on, then it's not as polished looking. You can not do it if you want. If you have very thick material, you could, but I think you'll like it better if you include this step. There are a lot of my videos that are on the free are puffed because the person that I was finishing for at the time, that's how she pretty much always does all of her ornaments, and so her customers request it. Yeah, that's good. So now our next step is the fabric. And like I said, I think we'll try to do a couple stars. I still like to try to make sure that the weave of the material is vertical and horizontal lines. I don't like to see it really skewed. And you might think, well, it really doesn't. Yeah, it kind of does do that. So we're going to kind of take some big chunks off of here so it's a little easier to hold. All right. And then what I want you to do is we start just like with any kind of upholstery job. We're going to dart, and this time you're about 1/8 of an inch away. Don't go right up to the foam core when you do your darts. I want you to do 3 darts, okay, like that. Then I want you to put the middle one, glue it, okay. Now we're doing this for the exact same reason we just put the smear of glue on. You don't put a smear on this. You don't want that. But for this, we are going to tack it here, so it doesn't shift back and forth. Just like we did with the needle point. And like I said, you do not have to get too close. Leave 1/8. And why are we doing 3? Because if you just do 1, when you fold this over, this material would bow funny and then you can't dart it, and it's just do 3 and then push that around. I want you to make sure that that's getting, I don't want to see any darts when it's at the end. Okay, you shouldn't see any darts hanging over these edges. Okay, it means that you've cut too close, and as you're pulling it around, it's a problem. And that's why I started doing this a little differently, is because at the class I realized that I've been doing this so long, I just do all the darts all the way around it, and I start tacking it down. But for new people, it shifts in their hands, the material. And so the darts were way over here, and then they came in too far over here, and then it shifted. So this is why we're going to the get it tacked down, okay, so that nothing shifts. And the material side is much more forgiving because you don't have that hard line of needlepoint that you got to pull the waste canvas around. And this will ebb and flow a little more. It's just going to be a little more forgiving. Again, keep that 1/8 out. Okay. Now we're going to take off some of this. We want a 1/2 inch, just like we did with the canvas. Cut your corners down. We don't need all that. Okay. Okay. So we just start to dart. Again, keep it a little away. More than less on corners. And you're like, well, that's just a straight edge. Why aren't you? I always dart. It just, because there might be a little curve that I'm not seeing or something. And let's just make our lives as simple as possible. Okay. That one I'm going to pull back up because it's a corner piece. And I'm going to do this. Now, if you kind of see little bows, like little peaks and pointy things wherever there's a dart, just get your darts on and then come back, reheat a little where that dart is, and just pull it in a little bit. It just means that it maybe didn't get glued down. When you pulled it on, it's created a little pucker. And push both of those down at once. Okay. Same thing. So I'm kind of holding my finger behind like I did with the felt so that my scissors don't go all the way up to that edge. It feels like I'm kind of blocking it until I start really thinking about these things and observing, because I just do it. I don't think about why I do what I do. And as I was doing that, it's like, oh, I think I'm keeping a certain amount away by having my finger there as like a little guard. So now we're going to do the straight end. Straight 2 darts here. Really get that pushed up. Okay. I'm going to put a little glue there. We're going to push that right over. Okay? Perfect. Okay. Now, definitely want to dart along any curves. When you start getting into interior curves like this, you don't need to dart because when you push this over, it darts itself. That's probably a little too much material for there. And why do I say that? I don't want a huge bulk up there. We're going to do that interior curve first when we glue. Okay. We're just going to roll our finger. Sometimes just doing that so it all rolls at once is better than trying to do them individually. I don't know why. Probably because, I don't know why. The support's all equal, maybe. So you don't have the, individual darts being pulled, maybe. Okay. Now, one of the tough things on this is when we go to glue these 2 pieces together, we want to make sure that we get the get enough on there, but not, and close enough to the edge, but we don't want to have it squish out like jelly out of a PB&J that you smash. I mean, you can see it's happening, and you grab your dowel needle and you just kind of drag it through the hot glue and pull it off of there. So it's, you know, not a huge deal, but when it's a lot, it can be a problem. Let's just avoid it. And we smear. Okay. Okay. See, now we don't see any darts along the edges, right? You don't see any white where it didn't get pulled around. Okay. Now we know that we're going to be beginning and ending down here, so we're not going to put, we'll put glue over here and over here, but we're going to leave this void so we can have a place to push it up in. Okay, so let's take a look at how they come together. Now, even though it doesn't look like a lot of material there, you can see through there. Okay, but that's okay. We're good with that. Alrighty. Now, I'm going to take this and lay it down, and we are going to put our glue right, and we're going to kind of smear it out. And the reason being is I want to make sure, I don't want to reinstate this, you know, get this glue that we just put down so hot again that all of our fabric starts to lift off, but I need it close enough to the edge that we're not going to have a huge gutter, because we want the edges to come together. Always put your needle point side down. And why is that? So that if it's going to bow because we press it down, the needle point side stays flat to the table and there's no arching. If it kind of happens on the back to accommodate that, little PB&J right there, little jelly. Boop. Okay, it's okay. We want that bow to be on the back side. We also take advantage of this time to kind of run your finger along that beveled edge, okay, and bend it towards the needle point. We're pushing, pushing, pushing. And why is that? We're closing the gap, okay? We don't want to close it too far because we do want a little gutter, because we are going to glue. But when you are sewing it on, you don't want to do that. So I'm going to pull this out just a tiny bit. That's okay. That corner could be a problem. We definitely want to make sure that is, sometimes putting your dowel needle in and bending it down like that can help close an area that seems like it might be too wide. Okay? But I think everything else is pretty good. So you can see it right here, that there's a lot showing there. Just take and kind of bend it back like that. All good. All right. Next step. Oh, that's weird. Oh. Okay. So now we are gonna, this is where the very skinny, I need my other glasses. I'm getting them too close to my face. Okay. So when it's like brand new glue, it's a little runnier. And so this is pretty new. I like it when it's aged a little bit because it dries almost a little faster. So we are going to go this way around. Oh, hold on. My phone's gonna die. All right. So we're gonna make a hole, open that back up again a little bit. I'm gonna slide this in. I'm not gonna glue that right now because we're gonna have to marry it in a few minutes. And you're like, what, Kelly? It's a solid color. How are you gonna marry it? Well, you have to make sure that the twists are the same. And it looks like, you know, why would it matter? Well, you want the twists to match so that it all melds together and it looks seamless. Okay? So, let's make sure I have a few pins available to me as I go along. I try to glue, okay, I gotta bring the camera. I like to try to keep the glue towards the back side, away from the needle point. Okay, and I just want a thin bead of glue. Not quite the size, just enough to kind of fill. I'm barely putting any pressure on there. That area. Don't go too far. I'm going to give it a second. Let's see. There. Okay. You see the... I know you can't at a certain point because I turned the auto off. All right. And you just make sure as you're going around that you're going to keep your twist even, because as you go around, it likes to untwist. Just naturally does it. It doesn't have a personal grudge against you. Okay. And we're going to just lay it right down. We're just going to bring our finger up like that. We're just going to hold it for a second. Okay. Just hold it right there. Keep pressing it in. Try to slide it between the foam core or into the foam core, but do not puncture out the back or out the front if you can help it. This will just help you kind of keep the pressure on. Anytime you use glue, uh, having pressure against it is a very good thing. So let's try to, and then what you do, see, you can't see any on the back. Now, if for some reason you see a little dollop there, again, you take the dowel needle and you just run it over that bead of glue and you push it down in. It'll disappear. All right. But, you know, it's like when I put the lids on the Limoges boxes. I put a brick on top of it so that it has good even pressure on it so that the glue gets good adherence. If after it's dry, I always test it to make sure, that's a little thick there, to make sure that the cording doesn't roll up. And if it rolls up a little bit, what do? On that, I always roll it towards the front to make sure, and I put another little bead of glue in there. And I can tell that that spot is a little thick. So I'm just going to run my needle along there and pull some of that glue down a little further. Okay? Just give it a second to set up so that it's not so roly-poly in your fingers. And again, I'm twisting it and I'm pushing it down. Now, you're going to laugh. You're going to go, okay, Kelly, all you got are giant pins. Now, I have little pins too, but I still like to use my big pins. So what I do is I just kind of put it in at an angle so that it's pressing that down, okay? I still like to just let it sit. Make sure that there's no little spots that have a case of the uglies and leaked out a little bit. And now that we're getting to the top, we have to decide on how, so I'm going to lay this, and what I'm doing is I'm putting it right in the twist and kind of wedging it towards it. There are tiny, I do have tiny pins around here somewhere. I just find them semi-annoying. Because they just don't hold it down tight. You know, they're almost too short. I gotta find my other ones that these, that size is better than, you can tell I've used them a lot because they're bent. So I'm gonna put a little tag on the top, but we will be coming back to sew this. Well, why are you gonna do that, Kelly? Because it's the hangy spot. It's gonna have the most stress put on it. So we wanna make sure. And here's the kicker. We got to bring it, we put one in there, right? Now we got to measure up 3 inches. 1, 2, 3. Okay, bring that down here. What was that? 1, 2, 3. I have my mat turned around, obviously, so my centimeter side is down. And I'm going to put that. We're going to kind of make them look like they're crisscrossing, but they're not really. You have to be very careful if you don't want those. Yeah, see, there's one of them. See how tiny that is? Let's see if I can get it to work. If you don't want the hangers that are twirled at the top, you have to be very careful of how you sew them on and how you do this part of it. Okay. I just, I constantly like to keep pressing down on it. And we'll get that all straightened out, right, when we come back, because there really isn't that much glue there. You're good. Don't freak out about it. And if it looks like it's a little loose, you could even do that area with no glue and then just do the quick sew throughs. All right. Just keep very careful, very lightly, and towards the back. Am I on camera still? Okay. I just like to go nice and slow. If you need help steadying it, put it on the table. I'm only holding it up because of the camera. Just give it a second. It's definitely stinky glue, just warning you. I don't really like the Eileen's, the white. I just feel like this is a much cleaner product. And it reminds me of, it's like some form of Elmer's glue. You can smell it. Hiya! See, and that's why I don't normally do a long strip like that, because it's a little harder to control. And I don't see any, oh, see, there's a little schmutz right there. Let's grab that. Just gonna push that down. A lot of times I like putting a little extra, doing the pin in the curve. Just, it's already got glue on it. Just to give it that little bit of help to stay down. I'm putting good pressure on it. Now I can see a little bit of shine from some glue right there. So just take your needle and just kind of run it under like that, and then roll it back and pinch. This is much easier than the shaped one we did the other night. Just saying. Much. Because of all the twists and turns on that. Okay. Right. Put that, twist it. So I want to make sure that that twist is the same as it's when we started. I'm going to help this. I want it to stay put while I'm doing the fishing line. Okay. So now we have to decide how much we go over. I usually go at least one. There's 1, 2 twists. That one is where I'm going to put the fishing line so we can chop it off. So earlier, I don't think you were with me yet, Lauren, but when I cut the cording, it started out as 36 inches of pearl cotton, and when we twisted it down, it ends up as you only get 28 inches out of it by the time you are done. We have what, maybe 6 left over? So that just shows why I do what I do with the skeins and why I cut them the way I cut them is because for the most part, unless it's a tree that's really got a lot of ins and outs, the 28 inches will finished, twisted cord will get you around the majority of the ornaments that you're going to do. Okay, so one of the things we want to make sure of is I try to see which twist, that one's going to be the one that comes in. So let's try to make it flat that way. Doesn't always work. Sometimes I end up, having to push and manipulate it a little more. But this I'm wetting my fingers for because I don't want to have to try to grab that paddle, the pliers. So for safety's sake, I just usually glue the ends in. I don't usually stitch them where they're married together, but you can put a stitch in there. Again, take a second, come back up, because now it's getting good and tacky and almost dry, and let's just make sure everybody's happy campers. All right, now I gotta bring this up a little. Okay. So now we're going to open this up a little. All right. And I'm going to kind of inject some glue down in the hole. All right. Like that. Then, do I want to turn it over one more? No, that's too tight. So we should be good there. So what we try to do is we try to run this parallel. Don't poke it straight down in. That's why having this glue on the end so we can manipulate it and move it and not worry about it becoming unfurled is really important. So we're going to push that, push, 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 right under that. Okay, so it lays like that. Ta-da! But we got to push that one down a little bit, and we got to put some glue on top of this little bit. Careful, because we are working on the side of the needle point, that we don't get too crazy. All right, gonna push that under. All right, and then we just push that down. Let's take this pin out. Yes, I do have pliers for that to save my teeth, but sometimes you don't have that extra hand to grab. Now I'm going to inject a little bit more, just a drop, because we need to spread that kind of in this area to hold. And I'm going to push this up, pull that back. We're working it into where it needs to be. And now I'm going to take this and push it back towards that material. And we're going to take this, put it between those twists, and winch it right down and just put it into the foam core that's in the back and let them dry. Okay? Take this off, and we're just going to run our hands, kind of look, nothing's pulling up, everything's nice and tight. It's sitting in that gutter that's not real big, We didn't have a very big gutter, but it's sitting right in it, nice and stable. And now we're going to deal with sewing the top, because you just don't want to risk it. You don't want to risk, you know, giving it away. Oh, poo. That's what I get. That would have come off whether I was doing it with my teeth or not. Okay. So now when we do this, see, it's going to hang nice and straight. You got to be really careful. I find it annoying when I see, and it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy, but when these loops aren't open and you see them twirled up, I don't care for that. That it's preventable. That's one of the reasons why I do the loop the way I usually do it, where it's not shoved down in together. All right, let's get on some. So this is a finger paper collator office, and I have a little piece of leather in there. Rubber grip tip. Okay, and I have one for my thumb. And we are going to use a 2-inch curved needle. It is a 2-inch curved Dritz because it's kind of chunky thickness to it. Fishing line here. We don't need a ton of it. And you know, one of the benefits to this is that sometimes when you are stitching it on, you'll get pole marks on the backs of certain materials. You don't get that when you're using this glue. Trying to get rid of the spiders. Okay, this is how you make a knot on the end. Here, I'm going to put this like this so maybe you can see it a little better. So you bring it around in a loop and you bring the tail through once, twice, 3 times. Pull the knot. Pull the lever. Oh, no, wrong show. All right. 1, 2, 3. Now we're trying to pull that towards the other knot. This is a fishing knot, and it gives you a nice big profile knot. Okay? And then we put a blurb of glue on it. Boop, to set it. So now when you're pulling that through, you know, the needlepoint canvas is really open. So regular old knots that we used for embroidery or for hemming our pants, or, you know, those obscene, weird things we used to do way back when that we don't do anymore, or we have people do now because the pants and the material are so out there. So they don't work. Those knots don't work. Okay, so we're going to come in here and I'm going to start on the needle point side, I think. You will have resistance. I'm driving it with my thumb. I'm guiding it with my finger. Having that rubber tip on there, I mean, when I didn't do this, I had no fingerprints on this and my middle finger, on my thumb and middle finger. So now we pull it through because it'll slide right off that curved needle. Okay, so we have that there. So now we have to take from there, and we're going to basically start kind of lacing back and forth. We're going through this twist into the back, and coming up in the middle on the back, okay? Just like that. All right, there. Now, I don't want to over twist this and end up with that weird thing that I was talking about, but it happens. So now I'm going in between those twists, those sections, coming down, and it looks like I'm beyond because I am the middle. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if we do it like here, we have to kind of, I went right in between those. All right. You have to kind of overdo it to accommodate, because when we smush that one in, it'll be right. It'll work. I promise. So now we're coming into this side of the loop, coming in between those sections. We are going to pull it down like this. I'm going to come in there. I came too far out with that, I think. Okay. Should have grabbed one behind it. Let's see if we can't fix it. Otherwise, I'm going to end up having to undo all that. Oh, it disappeared. Look at that. It disappeared. Okay. And I'm going to slide between these two, trying not to catch any of the other stuff. And I'm going to cinch the back side of that down. I don't know if you can see it. I'm going to put it right here in the middle, kind of on the interior. And I'm going to come up, try to come up on the interior, sort of there. Not quite, but okay. And I'm going to pull that down and in. And I really kind of was holding that as I cinched it down so it stayed where I wanted it to stay. Okay, I'm going to come back up through the front. Now, I thought I was going to need to put a bow on this, but I don't think I'm going to have to. But since we have a little extra time, I'm going to show you guys how to make a bow. So I'm going to tie this off right here. You know, what? It's on the front. I know. Don't worry, it'll disappear. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing we were doing before. So once we tamp it down, it's like, oh my gosh, I can see that. It's okay, you won't in the end. Let's do another round. What I like to do is I like to go 1, 2, and we do it again. Okay, and then what we do is you put it in, and you bring it out, and you pull, and that knot will disappear right up under. Okay, and now we just cut that piece of clear fishing line off. Gone. Now, do I love this? This one's not bad at all, but I do like having that other where it kind of disappears down in. It's just not feasible with the thickness of this. If you think you see a little, if a drop of hot glue goes boop onto something, don't touch it. Let it cool, then peel it off after it's nice and cold. It's gotten all, what do I want to say? Foggy. When it gets all foggy, just wait until it's totally, totally cool to get rid of it. Sometimes you'll see little white chunks on the back and you might panic. Just take a piece of tape like it's lint and it'll come right off. A lot of times there's so many things you can do. Just don't panic and smear, because if you smear it's on. It's staying on. So I'm gonna just do a quick bow so you can see one way to kind of hide the mechanics if you don't care for this style of ornament loop. And I was going to use that bow one, but I'm not going to. Or the last piece of fishing line, because that's what we're going to put it together with. You can't see it there, but it's there. So we're going to just make a real petite, what I call a 4 loop, but it's actually 5 because it has a center bow. Now you could just do a little shoelace bow. That's easy. Or, so we start with 1 loop, and we'll try to make it kind of petite, okay? And that means it's not going to be an easy one to make for sure, because the smaller it is, the harder it is. And we're actually going to leave ourselves a little more tail so we can have a little more manageable area to grab onto for the back. Okay, so we pinch and pull it out. Now I'm pulling that tail down out of my way because now I'm going to pinch that in right there. This is wire edged ribbon. I advise everybody use wire edge ribbon because over the years the bows can just crush and get nasty. This way it can at least get a little puffing up and have it look okay. A little steam, a little zhuzhing, and you're good. So now instead of doing another loop, we're going to kind of pull that back up under your thumb. And I have a fat thumb, so this, I have to kind of move the loop off the tip of my thumb. Okay, wrap it around, pinch. Okay, then pull it so that it's out from under a little bit. And then it's about the same size loop, and we pinch and we shove it in there. And we get finger cramps because I'm pinching it so tightly so that it doesn't shift and come out of my fingers. And I'm stuffing that right down in behind, okay? All right. So now we go cut, because I don't like to leave tails on them anymore. People don't like the tails. I don't like it getting and covering up the needle point. So here's the end, and we gotta feed that up through the center loop. Okay, and around. And I know a lot of people think that fishing line is evil. No. Clear sewing machine thread or clear sewing thread is what's evil. The way it spools off and never goes back on again. I hate it. But it's not easy, and it's not easy to see what I'm doing. So now we're going to make a loop to make a knot. Okay. In my teeth. Pinch that to hold that knot from unfurling. Put it through the loop again and make your knot. Okay? Okay. Now, you can literally use the fishing line that's left on here to sew your bow on. Okay, now let's look at this. Looks like this guy is a little smaller than that side. I don't know if I can manhandle that out or not. That fishing line's kind of unforgiving. So all you do is when you kind of fluff it, make that side a little fatter so that it looks, and make that one kind of a little more elongated. And then puff that. It's tough to get these tiny ones in the center. Hold on. I'm going to see if I can. There we go. I got that to move a little bit. But you got to hold that knot and kind of make sure that it does that. And actually, you know, the other thing I think I can do. Oh yeah, there we go. Pull that. Then I can pull that and get a little more out because of that tail. And I'm pulling the center. There we go. That pulled that one in. Yay! Okay, so now don't cut your knot, don't cut your long pieces here. We're going to cut that down, put a little dab of hot glue. Now be careful because this is metallic ribbon. Little bit of spit on my finger and I just kind of push it in against the other so that it doesn't fray. So you can kind of see that glue right up against it. All right. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Make sure I'm not. Okay. We're just going to kind of glue. All right. And push it down. Ta-da! Just like that. And then you're just going to put that on like that. Sorry, but I got to put my driver stuff back on or else I don't want to put it through my finger. Thank you very much, which I have done a couple times. And I want to put it kind of on the top. I don't like it being down here on the face. So I know there's some stitching right there. And I'm going to go, well, I think I'm going to go that way. There. Okay, like so. Kind of does have a direction because of how when I build it in my hand, there is a kind of a top and a bottom. Okay. Now, sometimes you never know if people want a bow on it or don't want a bow on it if they don't tell you. So, you always need to make sure that you're not covering up too big of a mistake with your bow. Because then if somebody hates it and they take the bow off, it's like, ooh, well, now they're going to see my boo-boo. So now I'm just going to take these two. Now you could run it back and forth a few times, but I don't think this is going to stay on this. So I'm not going to be overindulgent. And I'm just knotting the two pieces together that we used to make the bow. Okay. And cut that off. And do a little quickie fluff and stuffing. And there's a tiny bow on there. Not really necessary for what it was, but if you don't like the top, then you're able to cover it up. You know, if you don't like the loop, if it's just not your thing, you don't want to do it that way. The other option is to just bring your cording all the way over and then take one of those hangers that has the little curly Q on it, the metal ones that are out now that are really cute. And you could just stitch it once you, excuse me, once you have the cording over it, they just stitch it onto the top with, some colored thread, I guess. I'd still use fishing line. So it just disappears. And then you would have that little metal hanger from the top, or you can make your own little metal hanger like in the one that was my free one on that has the big metal hanger with the bead at the bottom that some other place used to do all the time. So did that help you out, Lauren, if you can answer? Because I know you're working.
Yeah, no, this was really fascinating.
Oh, good, good. And the video is much clearer. Just so you know, it's definitely a higher res. So you'll be able to go back and reference that and be able to see things in a little more detail than the Zoom quality.
And is the Zoom recorded as well or not?
Yeah, you're being recorded right now. I just record you on the laptop.
Okay. And then my original question would be, as a stitcher, you started out by saying this stitcher had done the 2 extra rows on each side and it wasn't really necessary. So if you didn't do those 2 rows,
Mm-hmm.
would it just be a little bit narrower? Or,
Correct.
okay.
Correct. See, because you can see the blue stitches because
Okay.
I just couldn't pull them all the way around
Right.
with the way I did it. And I never lose many stitches when I do things. So when people put the extra rows on, I mean, it just, if I'm forced to bury 2 rows, it makes such a thick edge
Uh-huh.
because, I mean, that's basket weave. It's thick. And
Yeah.
so ultimately, I end up not really losing that much. I have had some people that were upset and they're like, well, I didn't want to see the white around the edge. And it's like, but they didn't tell me that in the directions when they sent it to me. They just said, I can't assume that it wasn't intentional unless you tell me in the directions to bury those stitches. And I'd almost rather go through and if it said, I don't want to see the white, I'd probably pick those out because it finishes so much nicer to not have the extra. It just gives a nicer edge. It's a battle when you have to bury these. Um, Sometimes they're necessary. So the other shaped class that I did with the little unicorn that her little granddaughter drew, there were it was necessary just because there were points that we would lose the entire thing that were like 3 stitches. So it would get rolled over. So I told her, I said, yeah, we're going to have to do that with those. But we didn't kill the concept for her. Uh, it's really hard when you have some of these designs that they're just like floating out in space and you just have to fill in some of the areas because you literally can't cut up in there and turn them the way they want them. I had a sunflower pillow and they wanted all the petals to show and it's like it's not going to, especially when you're using a sewing machine. 6, 8 stitches up that are these tiny little points, you're just going to lose them when you turn them out right. So, you have to use your judgment on certain things that okay, this is going to need to be filled in because there's no way to turn it under and keep that point. It's a little different with like the new designs that I just did on the 4-inch round balls because they're not having to have, they're going against a flat surface. And so it's going to be a little different. We're going to be able to have some of those little points that you can't get on a standard ornament because I don't have to wrap it around foam core and do that. So again, it's a, if you have a square ornament and you have two lines of red all the way around and you really want a full two to show, then add one more row of red. Don't add white, which a lot of people, that's what they'll do, is they'll add some arbitrary color. And it's like, make it something that goes with it so that finisher can, it's going to show. If it's one strand stitch all the way around, it's barely going to show. I mean, that's two right there, two extra rows, and you can hardly see it. So if it was one, it's not going to be seen if you want it to be seen. So then if it's that same color, just give that one and it'll just be a little bit bigger. But don't do, you know, white. So it's just,
Right.
you know what I mean? I mean, does that make sense?
It does. I actually, I guess I don't have this designer's canvas, but I have the C'est La Vie Vouv bottles.
Yeah.
And the lids, the where the cork is, that area steps out,
Yeah.
and and it makes me think that you would need to put in some filler stitches there. Otherwise, you would be, your cord would be,
Yes.
you'd never be able to stick it in there.
Well, and so that particular one, you know, if it's the like the big bottles,
It's a little one. It's a little one, but it just has a different neck shape, I
yeah.
think.
So you definitely want to have that graduated extra step. I know the one you're talking about. I try to keep it in there, but you just can't. And it ends up getting buried as you're putting the cording around. The cording just can't bend unless you do such a thin cord. And then you'd have to do the mat board, which then you're still going to lose. If it's two stitches, it's going to disappear. It's just, it's going to get turned under. You're never going to see it. And so, yeah, put, you know, even if it's the same color and filling in a couple more so it's a little, looks a little exaggerated. If you really want the lip, then, you know, you're going to build it out a little more so you know you're going to push it around and you really want the shape of that. You definitely want to figure out a way to bump it out a little bit. Because you can always bury it if you don't like the way it looks.
Right.
You can always, those, a couple of them is no big deal to bury. It's when it's two rows of, you know, silken ivory or some really thick thread. And it's 13 count canvas. It's like, what am I supposed to do with this? This is going nowhere. So, and we had someone who came to the round class in person and she had done a whole bunch all the way around. And I said, oh, I said, do you want that to show? And she said, no, I don't. She sat there and ripped it out. She frogged that whole white ring around it because she didn't want it to show. And she just was told that that's how you do it.
Right.
So, you know, it's a judgment call. It's on a pillow and you want to make sure you're going to see that edge, then do more of the same color so you don't lose that border if it's part of the design. But was there any other questions that you had for any of these?
I
This,
don't think so. I think it's really cool how you get the beginning and ending of the cording to
yeah, it,
together.
yeah, it's, and it's all about, you do, okay, so if this is, you know, gold and this is green, as you're coming around the corner, you need to pay attention to where the colors are starting to fall so that you know, okay, I'm going to have to, and that's the other reason why I don't glue right along the beginning when I bury it, is because if I need to take the beginning cording out and untwist it a little bit so that the tail end coming in can hit the right color, you got to start paying attention back here. It's easy enough to do it here with monocolor because you just got to get it the right section hitting. And it's kind of easy to twist it and, manipulate it and push it. But when it is another color, and this is one of the reasons I don't like tricolored cording, is because they can be a real bear to marry. And nothing sticks out more than seeing two in a row of the same color. It's like, oh, that's where you ended the cording. And that's why I like when I do my circles, if I can begin and end at the top where I do the loop, tie it, make the little pointy on it, stick it down in, then I don't have to marry anything. And then I will do a tricolor cord because then I don't have to deal with that. But I have a few on there, I think, where you gotta kind of twist it and untwist it, and especially pillows, because you gotta sew it together. You're just lacing it all when you're sewing it back and forth, just like at the top. It's like, lacing a corset. You're going back and forth and tight and back and forth and tug and back, just to try to get everybody cinched in so they're all the same evenness of. And sometimes I feel bad because people will be on our group and they'll say, well, my cording isn't the same all the way around. And it's because as you're bringing it around, it just naturally starts to roll in your hand. And you have to keep twisting it to make sure that that these sections are the same as these. Because you can start out tight here and end up like this over here, which, that compared to that,
Right.
it's obvious. It's obvious. And really, it's just as simple as making sure you twist as you go. That's why I don't pin anything down. Like prior to when sewing, a lot of people will put like the little clip things or they'll pin it and then they'll come over and sew it again. It doesn't work because it naturally will still try to do that, especially if you're sewing. So, but that's my opinion. Anybody can do it the way they want to try it, but
Well, this has been a fabulous video. I really appreciate it.
good, good. I'm glad that it helps you out, and I hope that if you need any help, if anybody who's getting this video, if you need help, message me. I'm more than happy to talk to you anytime. If you want to talk it out, if you want to do a quick Zoom and say, okay, this just isn't working for me. And I'm here to help you guys out. Okay?
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, Lauren, and everybody else. Take care. And I'm going to go home and see my dog because he thinks I've abandoned him. Bye. Wrong mouse. Okay. And everybody have a great night. And again, if you need help, just contact me.